Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'll wait just a moment as we open up the waiting room and have people stream in one by one. So thank you very much for joining us for European Research Day, co-hosted by EURAXESS North America and George Washington University's Institute for International Science and Technology Policy. My name is Jackson Howard. My colleague, Dr. Derya Karacan, and I run EURAXESS North America here in Washington, D.C. As I make some brief housekeeping remarks before the formal opening of the event, I will share the agenda on my screen so you can look ahead to the speakers coming up. I will open with a reminder that EURAXESS North America and EURAXESS overall as a project is an official initiative of the European Commission to promote Europe as a research and living destination, and that through EURAXESS Worldwide, we also help connect researchers of all nationalities to Europe. Here at the North America Hub, that means the US and Canada, so please continue to use us as your points of contact to learn about EU funding and transatlantic research collaboration. We look forward to hearing from some high-level speakers in just a moment. And we also hope that we can answer some questions you may have during the panel discussion and hold a conversation with you in the breakout sessions that follow. We will be writing an event report after ERD concludes, and we want it to reflect the feedback you give in those breakout sessions so that we can convey your thoughts, needs, and challenges as researchers on the ground. So we hope that the exchange flows in both directions and that you do share your thoughts. So please share your questions via the chat during the upcoming panel discussion, as well as during the breakout sessions. Choose the topic that's most of interest to you, join the room, you'll hear from a facilitator briefly, and then be a part of that conversation. So as I now open the event, I'd like to start with a quick group photo, as we've done in past events. If I can ask some of you to turn on your webcams, we'll take a quick screenshot. I'll share it online, let people know that we're kicking off ERD 2022. So I won't be shy, I'll keep asking. We'll have a few people here for the group picture. I'm gonna try to get as many people as I can here in the gallery. And then I'll say 1, 2, 3, and cheese. And you can all take it and share it as well. Someone's always going to be blinking. So one of these will end up perfect. I just took a couple. So thank you very much. It's fitting that we are holding European Research Day today after Europe Day, which was yesterday. It's the day that celebrates peace and unity in Europe every May 9th. And during these challenging times, I think it's important to highlight that unity. So with that, I would like to introduce Jean-Eric Paquet, Director General for Research and Innovation at the European Commission. Director General Paquet has held this position for over 4 years now, and his career with the Commission spans nearly 3 decades. We at EURAXESS North America had the pleasure of meeting him in February 2020 during a keynote address at an event called Destination Europe in Seattle, Washington, where he promoted Horizon Europe and all of the research and innovation opportunities it has to offer. We're thrilled he's continuing this promotion in connection with the US. So Director General, thank you very much for joining us from Brussels this evening.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. Indeed, it was, I think, my last trip between the first pandemic lockdowns to Seattle and the Bay Area. And it was indeed a great opportunity to interact with you European scientists on the North American continent. And I'm happy to indeed follow on today. 2 years later, where the world is indeed a very different place, where the pandemic, of course, is shaping our research and innovation worldwide, with obviously also very many positive development, not the least being that European science with the BioNTech vaccine, which I think in the US you sometimes call the Pfizer vaccine, if I'm well informed. This vaccine was developed by a European company, so based entirely on European science, incidentally also funded by the European Framework Program, but really a European science adventure turned into innovation and an industrial and health success. So in a very different place 2 years later, and unfortunately in the last 2 months, very much also a world which is seeing the Russian aggression on Ukraine, a brutal war, putting into question the rule of law, the international world order, the UN system, where indeed, as we can see in UN General Assemblies, the world is putting pressure to end the atrocities and hopefully end that war and push back on the invasion. But that's another discussion, but one which is, I think, not unimportant also for us as scientists or research policymakers. And indeed, Europe, and I know the US alike, is turning to Ukrainian scientists. We have more than 5 million Ukrainians which fled to Europe from the war, of which, of course, many scientists, and there are many initiatives with the EURAXESS platform at the center of it to offer positions across European institutions for our Ukrainian partners and scientists, including a European Research Area platform for Ukraine, operated by EURAXESS, the European Research Council for Ukraine, Horizon for Ukraine, where many of our projects are offering positions as they implement to host indeed these refugees. As is the case for many around the world, we also are cutting our science ties with Russia. I mean, I'm obviously well aware that many Russian scientists are leaving Russia and have argued against the war, but the institutional, institute-based, rector-based setup in Russia is fully behind Putin on this war. So we have also decided to cut all research projects involving publicly controlled or public entities, which is essentially all the cooperation we had so far on the horizon with Russia. I think one can only hope that we will be able to look at a different situation at some point early, I hope. But for now, this is the situation, and I think it tells a story, the pandemic on the one hand, and the war in Ukraine of science being torn between these global corporations which generate amazing outcomes, and I'll come back to that in particular on our green transformations, and the fact that whether we like it or not, whether we are equipped to deal with it or not, we need to look at the world in which we operate our science as a very different one, and we need to take this into account. And this is also the sense of the new global approach on research and innovation, which was put forward first by the European Commission and then developed with European Union member states and the Council, where we are essentially saying that as Europeans, we want to continue to produce the best science in the world. Of course, we are not alone in that. We want to continue to do it with our partners around the globe, but we also need to accept and recognize that not everyone is seeing science in the same way we do, that reciprocity is not always there, that values or science integrity are not always upheld, and we need therefore also to be much better equipped to decide on the partners with which we want to engage. And this is very much what we want to do with like-minded allied partners, obviously the US very much so, to ensure that we can indeed across the globe continue to produce that great science within that policy framework. Now, turning to the US, I think the ties across the Atlantic are so deep that they can only continue to be the bedrock of global science between institutions across national EU programs with American partners, and increasingly also under framework programs. And I must say, I'm particularly pleased that we have now, for the new framework program, which has now kicked off for a bit more than a year, Horizon Europe, we have found at long last a solution to a lingering problem of the grant agreement to be entered when you participated in the Horizon Europe program in the US, where many US partners were shied away, if you want, by the legal exposure which they perceived in such grant agreements. We now have created for US entities a new status, associated partner status for US entities, and grant agreement does not need to be signed anymore, and that will no doubt facilitate participation of many universities and research organizations in the US in European programs. So I think these European Research Days are, of course, very much about you, European scientists in the US, but you are, of course, also the ambassadors of European science. And collaborating in the Horizon programs is, of course, always challenging. It is a highly competitive scientific and funding choices which are made. But one of the main challenges is often to be simply from the outset a part of those which construct a consortia which prepare a project. They are always across research organizations and member states. And please be our ambassadors and convey the options to our partners in the US so that on climate, on our green transformation, biodiversity and environmental degradation, energy, transport, all these areas very much included, but also on our digital transformation and increasingly on research which leads to more resilience of our societies, be it on health, the economy, industrial supply chains, where across the Atlantic, also with the Trade and Technology Council, we are working very strategically that we partner up even more than in the past to deliver these science, research and innovation outcomes for the world and certainly for our transatlantic community. And I finish by, again, as I did last time round, and I think is also the purpose for today, to say that I am, I must say, very impressed and honestly rather proud to see so many great European scientists live in the US, research in the US, work in the US, and invent and discover in the US. Obviously, I'm very much looking forward to see you back in Europe at some point as well, with European Research Council grants, for example, with maybe European Innovation Council grant and equity. You know that we have with our European Research Council, our Nobel Prize factory. Incidentally, chemistry and physics this year were European laureates with European Research Council funding. So we are, I think, quite proud of that. But we now also have the European Innovation Council, a little bit DARPA inspired, maybe a bit better, where we also hope to have a unicorn factory for Europe. So also for you as scientists and innovators, these will be ways for you to come back to Europe. We are looking forward to welcome you back and be then ambassadors from that side of the Atlantic for this amazing science community between the US and Europe. Thank you very much, Jackson, for that opportunity, and I wish you a very productive European Research Day.
Thank you very much, Director General. That was those were excellent remarks. I suppose it's appropriate to make a plug for out of the three great breakout sessions we'll have towards the end of the event. The first one will talk about Horizon Europe and some of those bottom-up funding schemes. So for those, whether you are European or not, but you're interested in funding to go to Europe to continue your research, we will have an expert colleague from EURAXESS Worldwide who will speak to those. So with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker. I should mention that France currently holds the presidency of the Council of the European Union. So the first half of this year is an exciting time as France works towards ambitious programs for Europe as a whole. And in a nod to the French presidency, we are delighted to feature French officials in both the upcoming panel and one of the breakout sessions. But without further ado, I'd like to turn to another French friend. We have Minister Counselor Aurélie Bonal, the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of France, United States in Washington, D.C. Speaking momentarily. It's a position she has held since 2020. Minister Counselor, thank you for giving us a European welcome here in the US.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. And I just want to wish you all a very happy European Research Day, and to also thank EURAXESS for this great program. Thank you, Director General, for your presentation. You mentioned the strong ties that we have with the US. And the thriving scientific community, and it's a pleasure for us, both as a presidency and as a bilateral embassy, to be able to develop those ties and to witness this strong connection between the US and the EU at the scientific level. I'll be very briefly talking about the objective of our presidency, but I also, something you said, Director General, about the different world in which we operate our science. And I think it's very important that to focus on that. And of course, our presidency has been impacted by the Russian aggression of Ukraine. And I cannot start my remarks without just mentioning Ukraine and mentioning our key priority collectively as Europeans and as Americans to support Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. This support, as you mentioned, Mr. Paquet, as translates into the scientific and academic field. we gave there was an immediate support to the Ukrainian people at the beginning of the war, to of course give full assistance to Ukrainian refugees. The immediate protection was granted, giving them the same rights, giving them a residence permit in the EU, the possibility to work, the possibility to get a housing, and it's very important for European to be able to do that for the Ukrainian people in general, but also for the Ukrainian scientists. And Ukrainian scientists are being welcomed to all countries of the EU, including France, and we want to have our labs wide open to our Ukrainian colleagues. In the short term, we have halted all scientific collaboration with Russia, as the rest of the EU and as the United States did. And in the meantime, it's also important to say that we want to secure spaces for collaboration with the Russian civil society, including scientists, who are in their vast majority opposed to the Russian invasion. And I just want to give an example of that with this joint statement of EURAXESS, which is an alliance of 10 top French universities, offering also assistance to Russian refugee scholars and students who have been forced to leave their country because of their public opposition to the war. And this is also very important content for us. On the French presidency, well, for us, holding the presidency of the EU EU European Council is a great opportunity to carry the voice of Europe and its ambition beyond its border. And it's what we have been doing for the past 4 months here in the US. Our president, President Macron, has outlined a threefold program for the French presidency on research and innovation. So the first pillar was to promote an EU knowledge policy through combined efforts between higher education, research, and innovation. The second pillar was to shape the international dimension of European higher education, research, and innovation policies, which was mentioned also by Director General Paquet. And the third pillar was prompting a sense of belonging to Europe, particularly among the youth. In this context, we are proud that one of the outcomes of our presidency is the Marseille Declaration. I'm sure you heard about it, but this declaration was enacted by the 27 member states earlier this year in March. And the idea is to settle upon a common framework for international cooperation on higher education, research, and innovation. And Director General mentioned the world in which we operate our science, and this declaration calls for a global approach based on a set of values and principles. And these values and principles are very much what links us together and differentiate us from other countries and other areas. They include the freedom of scientific research, ethics and integrity, research excellence, gender equality, open science, intellectual property protection, and environmental responsibility. And these principles are all aimed towards a powerful Europe in science. Another example of what we did and another tool to achieve the goals of our presidency is also the European Universities Initiative, which is a growing bottom-up network of universities across the EU working on common projects such as climate change, global health, emerging technologies. And late June, we will be welcoming a delegation of European universities to introduce them to the US, to their US counterparts, and start drawing a plan for the internationalization of these initiatives, which is a goal that is really close to our heart. Just a few words to conclude. I just wanted to mention our bilateral relationship with the US as well in the field of science. We organized last December in Washington the joint committee meeting for science and technology cooperation between France and the US at a very high level. Our French Minister for Higher Education, Research and Innovation was present, and the scientific advisor of President Biden as well. And more than 120 French and American researchers were mobilized. And we worked on three issues, which were global health, environment, and emerging technologies. And I'm sure it sounds familiar, because when you see the title of the conference today, it's exactly on these three items. So it's good to see that we are all in line. We'll be very happy to follow up on this joint committee meeting and to work together with the American counterparts and integrate some European content in this bilateral initiative as well. I just conclude by saying that the whole team at the embassy is, and throughout our consulates, we have 10 general consulates here in the US, are at your disposal to strengthen this collaboration. So don't hesitate to reach out. And I won't be able to attend the whole seminar, but the very best of the French presidency in the US will be there, because Mireille, our scientific counselor, and her team are following the whole seminar. So I leave you with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Ambassador. For a little bit of context, and as some long-term members of EURAXESS North America know, I should explain that European Research Day events typically rotate with a focus on Canada or the US every other edition. So for our researchers based in Canada, I will be delighted to share a recording of our past ERD with great conversations on Europe-Canada research collaboration. And I'm also happy to share a piece of news that 9 months of informal talks between Canada and the European Commission regarding associating with Horizon Europe concluded about 3 weeks ago, which will soon lead to the next stage, which is formal negotiations for a potential agreement. So please stay tuned to to us at EURAXESS North America for upcoming news. Obviously, we welcome any further ties, and I was very happy with Director General Paquet's remarks as well about removing some previous barriers, allowing US-based researchers and entities to associate a bit more closely with Horizon Europe. So that said, this year our ERD features a spotlight on US-Europe ties. And there's no doubt that the current events now and over the past few years have shown the importance of collaboration in research. So I'm delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, a US official with a strong global perspective and understanding of the benefits of international cooperation. Brian Stone is Chief of Staff at the National Science Foundation. Thank you very much for being with us today, Mr. Stone.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jackson. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to just say it's great to see our colleagues from the EU and France. I appreciate the DCM's remarks. My goal here will be to try and briefly get us back on schedule to the extent that I can, because I'm very excited about the panel. So I'll try and keep this, I originally had 10 minutes. I'll see if I can do it in less than that. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll see how this works. So hopefully you can see my slides, Jackson. Yes, if you can. Okay, great. So first of all, I'm going to recap some of what our director normally says. So if any of you have heard our director, Dr. Panchanathan, talk before, then you'll have heard him talk about basically the fact that NSF needs to strengthen its speed and scale. That's our catchphrase now. Let me see if I can get this to advance here. Okay, so NSF, just very briefly, is a federal agency with a fairly broad mission. It's to promote the progress of science, advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and secure the national defense. Very broad, but basically we are the agency that focuses almost exclusively on basic research and driving that forward, because that's really what fuels the innovation economy here in the US, or at least has for the last 70 years. Our current vision, we have 3 pillars, and I'll talk briefly about each of these. First is advancing the frontiers of research into the future. That is about this imperative that we have to push forward innovation and to use that as a vehicle to raise the bar and improve the economy for everyone here in America and actually internationally. The second piece is ensuring accessibility and inclusivity. our strong desire here at NSF is to make sure that as we drive the future forward or drive ourselves towards the future, that we're bringing the whole of the country along. We have people all across the country that to date haven't been able to participate in the innovation economy. And that's one of the things that we're really looking to change in the future. We want a 10-year-old from Manhattan, Kansas to have as much opportunity to participate in the quantum revolution as somebody who lives in San Francisco or Boston. So one of our very strong messages is making sure that we bring the opportunity to the whole of the country. The last piece is about securing global leadership. And by securing global leadership, we don't mean doing that alone. We want to collaborate with all of our other counterparts because it's really our imperative to bring technology and innovation to the rest of the world. We do that through our global partnerships. And you can see that partnership is a key foundation of all of the work that we're doing. I'll talk a little bit more about that, as well as innovation being weaved through all of those. So those are our three primary pillars that we're building our vision around. The next piece are our three priorities for NSF. One is strengthening established NSF. So by that, I mean, we've got 70 years of basic research that we've been supporting. And we need to do everything that we can to continue that. It's worked out extremely well for us. We have been the place to come for discovery-based research, curiosity-driven research, and so it's a moral imperative for us to continue to do that. The second piece is about inspiring the missing millions in the U.S., and by that we mean there is a tremendous wealth of untapped talent here in the U.S., but also internationally, that we need in order to remain competitive. We've relied very strongly on international collaboration and people coming to the U.S., and we want to continue that. So it's not an either or proposition. It's an all of the above. But we also need to engage our talent here in the U.S. and make sure that we're providing the opportunities for everyone to participate in the STEM and innovation economy. And then the last piece is accelerating technology and innovation. I'll mention we've got a new directorate that we've launched for the first time in 40 years that's going to be exclusively focused on accelerating technology and innovation and really focusing on bringing that to the market and commercialization faster. When we focus on basic research, I have some examples. The chain is 40 years long for some of those paybacks. And so we're looking to accelerate that. And there's a whole lot of opportunity coming in the future to do this. Okay, our NSF, we tend to think about as a strand of DNA. We've got on the left side, our curiosity-driven and discovery-based exploration. And on the right, we've got these use-inspired solutions-focused innovations that I just mentioned. I think some people feel that we should focus exclusively on the left. We've always done the left and the right, and that's an important piece for us as we look back on our 70 years. For example, many years ago we funded something through the Stanford Digital Library Project that turned into Google, and that's now a $1 trillion company. We funded many other activities when they were getting their start that have now turned into billion-dollar companies like Qualcomm and Ginkgo Bioworks. You take your pick. There's any number of STEM-focused companies that have started at NSF and shifted off and are now on their own. I'm going to mention a few COVID-19 examples here because I know the focus is on improving global health, and so let me give you some examples. In the 1960s, we were funding PCR work. So I think most of us here know what PCR is. And that's the same technology that we are using today to do rapid coronavirus tests and virus detection in wastewater. So, 40 years ago plus 50 years ago, we were funding basic technology that now is in implementation. In the early 1980s, we funded 3 of the 5 basic technologies that have now formed the basis of 3D printing. Who could ever want to stick plastic together in this way? Well, apparently a lot of us, because now we're using it for personal protective equipment, and it's like $5 billion industry. CRISPR-Cas9, we supported that in the early days. I gave Jennifer Doudna the Waterman Award, and now she's a Nobel Prize winner. So I won't go through all of them, but let me just say that we have a very long history of supporting things and then 30 to 40 years later, enabling a lot of discovery. And I've got more examples, but I'll save them for the panel. Okay, the newest thing we have here at NSF is this Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships Directorate. And as I said, we literally just launched this last month. The director rolled it out, or in late March, rolled it out at South by Southwest. This is a new directorate that will be focused on basic research and accelerating its transition over into application and commercialization. As I said, there's been some concern that we'll focus too much on this and that we're losing our way, but we're very much committed to making sure that NSF, as I said, with the DNA strand, continues to be a place where you can get curiosity driven, but also use inspired research funded. We also launched last week our first announcement of awards out of TIP, which is this regional innovation engine. And these are going to be proposals that we'll receive from coalitions across the country to look at critical and emerging technologies. They'll be focused around the skilled technical workforce that we know we need to build capacity and to compete, building an innovation culture, and then bench to benefits, which is really focused on taking work from scientists and translating it directly into societal benefits. So this is going to be a big program for us. We're expecting it to be distributed all over the country, and we're working very closely actually with the Department of Commerce to figure out how we can synergize with their tech hubs that they're going to be working on in the future if some of these major pieces of innovation legislation get passed. Okay, I've got a slide here that talks about each of our directorates. NSF has several research directorates, and then we have a number of offices like Office of Integrative Activities. We've got the TIP Directorate, and then our Office of International Science and Engineering. These are what we call cross-cut directorates because they're embedded in each of the discipline areas. Like I said, happy to talk more about that in the panel. I want to give you a few examples of some international partnerships just to talk about things we're excited about. First and foremost, we're going to be actively working to be finding partners on some global centers. Our head of international science and engineering, Dr. Kendra Sharp, that I think some of you on this call may have interacted with, her and her team. They are going to be working with some of our international partners to try and form this up. We've had conversations with Italy, and we've had conversations with India. Director's going to the UK next week, so we're actively looking for areas that we can collaborate on topics of global interest, mutual interest, but in a center-based way. We have also funded a number of Rapid International Type 1 awards recently, and we've got a program called Data Infrastructure Builders, which is really about this sustainable research. It's about sustainable research collaborations, and it's focused on identifying the debates, conflicts, orderings, and important decisions that define these COVID data tracker systems. So we've just recently funded 3 awards, one to the University of Washington, UT Austin, and Northeastern University. So these are opportunities for them to collaborate with international counterparts directly on a very societally relevant topic for us. We've also got a program called GlassNet, which is funded through our ExcelNet program, which strengthens connections between researchers focused on sustainability, also an area of concern for a lot of us, including our colleagues from France. That's got a global network with 5 counterparts in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and a couple others that we expect to be a multinational bridge for intellectual partnership and shared community resources. And then the last thing associated with the picture here is I'll give you an example of a major facilities collaboration. We have worked with Japan and international partners for many, many years on the International Ocean Discovery Program. where we provide drill ship resources, as does Japan. We have an international consortium. They go all over the world and drill sediment cores and bring back records of the climate for thousands of years, and enables hundreds of researchers. So, you know, combine that with some of our other international programs like the telescopes and observing networks. And I'll say right now, we've got an exciting announcement that's going to be coming up on Thursday about black holes. I don't want to give that away, but it's not possible to do these big, I'll say planet-wide discovery programs without international partnerships. So I think that's my last slide, and I hope I've gotten us close to back on time, Jackson. And I look forward to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much again. We'll jump right into the panel as you suggest. We'll hear insights from a great set of speakers, including Mr. Stone, who will remain with us. So I give the floor now to our moderator, Dr. Nick Vanordis, who is Professor of Economics and International Affairs at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and Director of the Institute for International Science and Technology Policy, among several other positions and accolades. Dr. Vanordis, thank you for moderating. I understand you will set the context of the panel with some remarks, as well as introduce the panelists. So thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jackson. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Nick Vanordis, and my role here is actually to moderate a very esteemed panel. The panel is composed by Brian, who just spoke, but also two esteemed European colleagues. The first is Dr. Florent Bertin. He is the Science Counselor for Research and Innovation of the European Union here in the delegation of the United States here in Washington. And Dr. Mireille Guyander, Counselor for Science Technology at the Embassy of France here in Washington. I wanted to set the tone for this panel with a little presentation, but given the delay, we are running a little bit late. I will skip that presentation. It can go to EURAXESS site later on, but I want to set the tone with a few remarks from the presentation. Wanted to say this. First, we are talking here about Europe and about the US primarily, and the relationships between these two scientific relationships. One thing that one needs to consider is that the United States has, of course, its views on Europe, and the Atlantic has been extremely important. But the last few years, the last few decades, on the other side of the country, the Pacific actually, that has become extremely important, and the rise of China. So the United States and the people who set the tone for policy here are, of course, looking at Europe, but also they are looking on the other side of the eastern part of Asia very much, as well as the south part of Asia, with India rising fast. The second point that I wanted to make through that presentation is that increasingly, since the year 1980, it is the private sector in the United States that is the major player in science and technology and innovation, primarily innovation. So when we discuss about transatlantic relations, we have to incorporate the private sector, who is missing, for example, from this meeting. Nobody from the private sector is right here to tell us. And the private sector in the United States spends 3/4 of the R&D money, and actually carries out 3/4 of the research. So the private sector and the universities are extremely important players. So if the private sector and its research enterprise is not carried along in this relationship, nothing will happen, no matter what our political leaders talk about. So we can meet and we can discuss and we can write treaties and whatever, but if we don't persuade the private sector to actually actively collaborate across the Atlantic, we will not succeed very much. And the third point that I was trying to make in that presentation is that, of course, and for a very good reason, Europe is very much focused on the aggression of Russia today, but we worry also very much about some other security issues, and those will be in East Asia. And I hope in this discussion is not just what is happening in the Ukraine and what we do with those scientists, but what actually we do with East Asia, where other countries are under serious threat. And those other countries that are under serious threat happen to be leading currently some critical technologies for us. Leading, and I mean leading. I don't mean following, and that is Taiwan and South Korea. So this discussion is about transatlantic, but also there is a bigger context that of the private sector and that of the global concerns that should be, I think, part of this discussion. That's it from me. Without further ado, I want to turn to our panelists. I introduced him already, and I will simply follow with the questions. I will open the questions. We have 4 questions in front of us, one by one, and I will ask them, those who want to contribute, to do so. So the first question is, what is the role of transatlantic cooperation in the 3 topics that we have in this meeting, right? Any of the panelists want to start?
I'm happy to start, Nick, if you want, just to give the European tone, if that's okay with my co-panelist.
Absolutely.
So, good afternoon, dear friends, dear colleague. Thank you so much for having me on this panel and in this event. It's one of the flagship events for us the EU delegation in Washington, where I resume my work in September. So indeed, it's been already flagged by our Director General that the European Union is strategy for international research and cooperation is geared by the global approach to research and innovation, and in which the transatlantic cooperation is extremely important, is the bedrock of international cooperation. I want to make some nuance to that, because we are addressing here 3 different topics. It's the green transition, the health challenges, and the digital transition. There are very different areas. All of them are very important, and they require very different approach to international cooperation. For instance, the green transition requires a global approach to cooperation. We need to engage with all partners around the globe, and this is very much what we are doing at the European level. We are at the European Commission level, we're engaged in a number of multilateral platforms such as Mission Innovation, which is meant to foster the development of green technologies to find solutions to reduce CO2 emissions. And this type of platform are joined by a number of major actors, including China, India, and of course the US. So I think I really want to stress that transatlantic ties are very important. But as you very much said also, Nick, in the beginning, research innovation is first and foremost a global endeavor. And it's actually in Europe's DNA to be open. We have been open for the past 2,000 years. We have a very, very strong tradition in reaching out to the rest of the globe in terms of cooperation. And actually, every time we've reached out and we promoted mobility of scholars or researchers or networks, at any age of the European history, this was followed by a golden age in terms of technological development and improvement and progress. So I think we really need to insist on this openness and the necessity for global endeavor, where all the actors of the science actors are part of it. And this is very much true for the green transition. It is also true for the health challenges. Of course, we've seen the COVID crisis. The European Commission has been instrumental in launching or participating together with the NIH in a number of international platforms, also, for example, on rare disease or on cancer or on infectious disease. So here, the idea was to team up with the US partners and then, of course, open it to anyone else around the globe who wish to contribute. And I think this is very important to see how the EU and the US agree very much on these strategic objectives and team up to find these solutions. Then there is a particular aspect to the cooperation, of course, which is on digital, which there it's a bit more sensitive. We've heard from Director General and from the French Deputy Head of Mission that the world is not like it used to be. And actually, I recommend there is a very good article in the Financial Times by Henry Kissinger, was from yesterday, I believe, telling us we don't live in the same world as 5 or 10 years ago. We're in a very much different world. And the research innovation are actually central to this new world we're living in, and especially digital aspects. Why? Because obviously the digital dimension is instrumental to control of society or to having the possibility for authoritarian regime to meddle in our private life. So I think here this is an area where the US and the EU should team up for the technological development, of course, but also for the directionality of this technological development, where we must ensure that we are developing these technologies for the benefit of the citizen and not for the benefit of authoritarian regime, making sure that privacy laws are respected and that it's really for the benefit of the people. So I will stop here because I've talked already too much, and I want to give the floor, of course, to my co-panelists, and I'm happy to contribute more later on. Thank you very much, Nick.
Perhaps Mireille wants to follow?
Sure, thank you, Nicolas. And thank you to EURAXESS for giving me this opportunity to share this panel with such distinguished speakers. Good afternoon, everybody. So maybe I will give a more perspective from France, probably, although we are fully committed to the Europe endeavor, as you may already know. And we are a country that is really open to all the world, and we are welcoming scientists from everywhere. So for us, the role of transatlantic cooperation in the 3 domains that are the subject of our meeting today is absolutely critical. And in fact, as already mentioned earlier, the joint committee meeting for scientific collaboration between France and the United States highlighted these 3 main topics that correspond almost exactly to the ones that we are discussing today: health, environment, and emerging technologies, and which are obviously a tool of the digital transformation. The environment and public health in particular are global issues that need to be treated transnationally, and Florent mentioned it earlier. Researchers from France and the United States who took part in the joint committee meeting highlighted the need for increased cooperation in these fields, particularly when it comes to data sharing, which is critical to the advancement of science. And this is something we want to bring to the next level with our partners with whom we share common values. One domain also that I would like to mention is the quantum information science and technology, which carries great hope for the future of computing, securely communicating, and accurate sensing. It is a very strategic field, and like-minded countries feel the need for a trusted dialogue. European countries are involved in a dialogue initiated by France in January and continued last week, for instance, at the IISTP, where an international meeting was held on the theme of pursuing quantum together. So this highlights again the importance of transatlantic cooperation in that field. So for us, these three topics are a central component of our transatlantic cooperation, and we want to get even more involved in the near future. In France, our most active areas of collaboration with the United States in terms of co-publications are biology, medicine, and physics. Computer science is another leading topic of collaboration. France and the United States publish an average of 21,000 publications together every year, and CNRS, the National Center for Scientific Research, account for 40% of them. In terms of health, for the year of 2017, for instance, our French dedicated National Institute in CERN partners with the United States for 17% of its publications. So that numbers show how important for us is the transatlantic cooperation. INSERM also works closely with the NIH on subjects such as neuroscience and mental health, addiction, and pandemic preparedness. So really, these are all global issues that we should work together on. Most generally speaking, French research institutions are developing specific tools to encourage bilateral cooperation on all levels, ranging from researcher to researcher to supporting international networks. Our science office carries out additional programs to support mobility. Another evidence of our commitment is that our office is one of the 5 scientific networks that France has established in the world, and the largest one by the size of its team and its geographical coverage. Aurélie mentioned 10 general consulates in the United States with a scientific office and the themes it covers. So really for us, these are examples on how important for us is the transatlantic cooperation in the 3 domains that we are discussing today. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Mireille. Let me go to Brian. Brian, you can continue with this question, but also move to the next, which is examples. Give us examples of collaboration. Yeah? Sure.
First of all, let me say just for Florent, we're very much looking forward to our discussion in October that we're going to have. I know we've got a joint consultative group meeting on S&T cooperation scheduled for October, focused on research and innovation policy, values and principles, green transition and climate, and emerging technologies. I just want to say for both Florent and Mireille, I really appreciate you just for the rest of you, you notice we're using words like shared values and aspirations. That's very important. Those words matter a lot to us right now because as we talk about international cooperation and collaboration, we very much believe that we should be able to collaborate with anyone who shares our same values, who shares our same aspirations, who wants to value things like openness and the protection of data and things like that. So, you know, I'm heartened that we're all using the same words because that should be an indicator to everyone else at the need for our transatlantic partnerships. It's through these actions that we're going to demonstrate to the rest of the world, you know, the behaviors that we want people to have. Transatlantic cooperation is essential for us. I mean, you know, we've met with many of our counterparts in other countries recently, and it's, as I said, it's obvious that there are many things that are very well done over in Europe that we could learn a lot from here. For example, we've had conversations with our counterparts in Germany about the fact that if we're going to train up a skilled technical workforce here in the U.S., Germany has an amazing system of apprenticeships and training, and their entire career tracks devoted to producing the not PhD researchers, but the STEM enabled workforce that you're going to need to be able to do these things in the future. I mean, you know, let's be honest. Electric cars of the future are computers with electric motors attached to them, and they are going to need people that know how to work on them. And so we have a lot to learn from our European colleagues. Just to transition into this second question, I'll give you a couple examples of things that would not have been possible without collaboration from between the US and the EU. We would not have been able to announce the discovery of gravitational waves if it weren't for our two gravitational wave observatories here in the US, but also the Virgo Observatory that's in Italy. It takes these very large observing systems working around the world to be able to produce these very broad scientific results. So you know, you can go things alone to a certain extent, but you can't get it all the way without international collaborators. Another thing that I'll just mention from my own background, my background is polar programs. You know, we collaborated for many years with France to recover ice cores at the Russian station Vostok. So these were international collaborations. A lot of what we know about the climate over the last 400,000 years comes from these deep ice cores, and you can't do that stuff without international collaborations. You know, I think that it'll be very important for us in the future. Now, on this topic of data, one of the things that you know, I wish two things. One is I wish I had $1 every time somebody says data is the new oil. We need to come up with a new phrase. Maybe we could call it the new green hydrogen or something. Data is the new something else. But the challenges that we are going to have around protecting privacy, understanding how to use these, you know, broad databases of health records and things like that. You know, the challenges are common between us and our European colleagues. And so that's an area where I think if we are moving forward on protection of privacy, I mean, here at NSF, we have something called America's Data Hub, which is a consortium of research folks that basically we can throw grand challenges into, and they can, you know, they can help us try and solve them. And they're around things like, how do you anonymize 350,000 Veterans Administration records and not be able to pick out, you know, my father-in-law, for example, just because you are able to find certain things. These are common challenges that we're going to share. And I think this focus on data and sharing that information is going to be imperative, because we need the European data as much as you need the US data when it comes to solving these grand problems.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Florent, Mireille?
Yes, thank you, Brian. Yeah, thank you so much for these comments on share value. And that I think that's probably where we should most insist today with this changing world. Linked to that, but not so obvious, just to name a few type of cooperation we're having. Of course, I mean, we all know the cooperation we are engaging for the ITER on fusion, with the CERN on high particle physics. I'm very much convinced that all your national labs in the US, Brian, I have cooperation with European partners. So needless to say that, I mean, there are numerous examples. The transatlantic ties have been there for many years, of course. I like to say since the independence of the US. So I think I mean, we could name a lot of them, but I wanted to flag also one that is not so well known is the cooperation we have with NIST on pre-normative research and standardization. Why is it important? Because we're talking about the standards of the future, and there again, probably that's where the international competition is the fiercest. And it's clear to say for probably not so well known for fundamental researchers, but that's who controls the standards controls the market. So that's where, and the standards are very much linked also with the values and the principle we hold dear. So there, it's, I think the cooperation that, for instance, our Joint Research Center and NIST the National Institute on Standards has is very important for that on the digital aspect, of course, on quantum, but also on areas which have a big potential of growth, like the electric vehicles. We need to make sure that the charging station and the plugs and so on are all aligned before we all develop our own, and we need to make sure that the standards are aligned to facilitate transatlantic trade also on that. So that's also why research innovation cooperation across the Atlantic is very important to this newly created group on the Transatlantic Trade Council, where these issues are looked at. And I want to insist really very much on this importance of cooperation on pre-normative research, because that's where it starts. Probably when we look into standards, it's too late. And this is an area where we should very much intensify our cooperation, screen a little bit all these areas and see if there are any other potential for strengthening our ties there. Thank you.
This is extremely important, actually. This pre-normative research, pre-competitive, whatever one calls it, is extremely important. Just, you reminded me, Florent, just yesterday, it was agreed that the big meeting, international meeting for standards on the cloud, technology of the cloud, is going actually to be at GW with our institute facilitating next fall, which is something that is extremely important. Both European and American partners, all the big companies that you know will be participating, because the cloud is one of the huge business. It has become a huge business, and the standards are extremely important. Okay, Mireille, examples. Do you have any?
Yes, I have some. I will try to be brief, not to mention the lot. I have a lot, in fact, but I will try to make a selection. Thank you, Nicolas. So, for instance, one of the major achievements this year is really the international research centers that the CNRS has established with the University of Arizona, for instance, to create their very first ERC in the United States, which is the most integrative tool of the CNRS. And this IRC aims to meet the major scientific challenges on the natural, social, and digital environment. So, and actually on the breakout session, there will be Joachim Ries speaking about the challenges that this center might represent for them, and the advantages also of creating this center between France and the United States. Another international research center is in the making with the University of Chicago, and this will be focused on quantum technologies and on that and on the many other collaborative tools that the CNRS has. I will let my colleague Sylvette Tourmont talk about it later on the breakout session. What I wanted to mention is the historical collaboration in earth sciences. France and the US have a long-standing cooperation in this field, especially in altimetry and oceanography, with partners such as NASA, NOAA, and CNES, and the French Space Agency that have jointly conducted numerous missions, starting in early 1992 with the TOPEX Poseidon experience. Today, CNES is working jointly with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory to launch the SWOT mission by the end of the year with invaluable insights in hydrology. All these missions are essential to monitor and understand our planet and helping scientists across the world to tackle climate change and cope with its effects. Another example is the INSERM, International Associated Labs, and the joint units and some bilateral agreements in the making. Some of its strongest partners include Columbia University School of Public Health and the University of Pittsburgh Eye Center, which is creating currently a Vision Institute that will complement the Vision Institute in Paris. And I would like to end by mentioning the long-standing collaboration in cancer between the National Cancer Institute, for instance, and the Institut Curie, to name a few of the institutes in France that are working in the cancer. And there is also in that field an historical cooperation.
Thank you, Mireille. In fact, there was a question from the audience on collaboration in oncology.
Okay, so there is a strong collaboration in this field. Yeah.
All right, very good, very good. Let's go for the future now. Who wants to jump in? What are the prospects for the future in this transatlantic collaboration? Brian.
Sure, if I can unmute myself here. So I think one of the opportunities we have, again, when we've talked with some of our other partners, and I'm glad you mentioned this, Nick, up front, when you were talking about engagement with the private sector. One of the common threads that runs through all of us is there are multinational corporations that have R&D enterprises in all of our countries that are a common thread. So, if we're talking with, when, the director was just up in at IBM Yorktown talking last week, Derya Gill, who runs IBM, their labs are all over the world. When we go to talk to them, they bring in their crew from Spain or Italy. So, so there are lots of opportunities for us to engage the private sector, but on a multinational basis. I think that's one of the areas where we need to, I think certainly on our end, we've talked about how can we create the incentives, how can we make the government a better partner for companies to come together and deal with these grand challenges. Because your point earlier, Nick, about the amount of money that the private sector puts into R&D, they do put a tremendous amount in. But there are still these key areas around things like artificial intelligence, or thank you, Florent, for flagging our colleagues over at NIST. The standards, you're absolutely right. The standards are, if you set the standards, you're controlling the market. And so we have an opportunity to work with these companies to figure out how we can move things in the most advantageous way, the most socially responsible way, and things like that, because I think we've learned that, some of these new technologies are going to require careful thought as we go into developing them out. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to mutually engage common business partners at the kind of the multinational level.
All right, thank you. Flora?
Yes, indeed, Nick. So the future. So first and foremost, the very near future, I want to flag that we will have a ministerial meeting on 13 July of the All Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance, which is one of the flagship of transatlantic cooperation. It was started about 10 years ago with the European Commission, US and Canada, and we have extended to many countries such as Brazil, Capo Verde, and many others. And we are actually launching the new decade of this alliance in July through this ministerial meeting. And here, of course, from the US side is NOAA that is involved, and of course will fund all its marine researchers to do research on all the issues that are dealt with in the marine environment. So it ranges from monitoring the all Atlantic Ocean, and monitoring the pollution, and also addressing the possibilities for blue growth. Which leads me to the topic that Brian raised on the cooperation on the private sector. So of course, the program that we are funding, Horizon Europe, address the whole innovation cycle, and that's why we have this European Innovation Council that promotes not only startup but scale up. And by the way, I know that it's not so well known from our American audience, but the majority of the youth now in Europe, and I know it's especially true in France, wants to be startuppers, and there's this really renewed dynamism among the new generation. They want to innovate, they want to create their own startups, and it's really rejoicing to see that. And we're trying to give them as much opportunity as possible. And actually, through this European Innovation Council, we are bringing the startups to the US on a regular basis. We were in Las Vegas for the Consumer Electronic Show. We will be in Miami, in San Diego for the BIOS. And we are looking forward to find not really investors, because of course we don't want the startups to move physically to the US. And I know it's very tempting, and that's the danger we are facing. But we want them to find partners, business partners, clients, and so on. Now, this being said, I'm half joking. We really understand that the VC landscape is amazing in the US, and it's hard to compete with. We're trying to do our best, and we are stimulating this VC landscape. But of course, I think it's important that these startups are successful wherever, because it's of good benefit for everyone. So I think that we would rather see a startup growing anywhere than dying. And I think it's really important to give them as many opportunities as possible. So voilà, this is a bit the future. Of course, it's hard to tell today because we will have this joint consultative meeting where we agree with the US of the future of cooperation. But we are resolute to increase and strengthen wherever possible this cooperation. And we are very much looking into probably strengthen our cooperation into clean tech energies, which is quite important. And also the other aspect, which is pollution. Plastics will be high on the agenda, linked to the Marine Alliance. So there are many aspects that we have not looked into so much in the past that we should, because they are linked to this new package that we have launched, which is the Green Deal at the European level. So we need to discuss that. We need to also look into areas that are probably a bit new to the US, like the circular economy. Making sure that the products, when they are manufactured, they are recyclable by design. So there are many areas that we want to look into, because we need to transform our economies. We need to make them more sustainable, more inclusive, and we need to do that together. And we need to make sure that on both sides of the Atlantic, everyone else is on the same page. So we are very much looking to share our views on this green transition aspect with our US partners.
Great, thank you. In fact, we have questions from the audience about the private sector participation in transatlantic collaboration. People are asking about legal frameworks for private sector participation, which I think it's a very broad topic discussed, but there is interest. Florent, you want to say something?
Yeah, very briefly. So Horizon Europe is open to any research performing entities, be private or public. So any companies can participate in Horizon Europe calls. There are some, for the innovation calls of the EIC, you must be residing in Europe. So if it's a US company, they must have a subsidiary in Europe. But of course, it's open to any type of research performing entity. So the private sector is, of course, fully part of Horizon Europe for their participation.
And Brian, I think the same goes for the United States, right?
Right. I'll just ditto Florent's comments. I think, I guess one of the things that I'll say when we've talked with industry about kind of, how to foster some of these things, as I said earlier, we're trying to figure out how to make the government be a good partner, an attractive partner. We come with a lot of rules and a lot of requirements when you partner with the government, which makes sense because it's taxpayer dollars and public funding. One of the things that we have been talking more about, and again, I'm trying to channel our director here, is how do you bring competing companies together to deal with a common problem where the result could be, that you raise all boats for every company, but there would be a competitive advantage in one person having it before somebody else. There's a lot of areas where we've actually seen good collaboration. We've got some collaborations around wireless technologies. Those are common threads between the EU and the US, transatlantic. But we're trying to find these spaces where there's just a thorny challenge and everybody agrees that somebody has to solve it, when the government can step in, incentivize this, and then essentially back out of it. Okay, we solved that problem. We've got general artificial intelligence now, and here's, now we're going to figure out what we do with it, or something. That's maybe a bad example to pick, but, go back to wireless. I think that we're trying to figure out where are the threads that are holding everybody back, how can we help solve it, and then how can we pull out of it?
All right, very good. Mireille, future and opportunities.
Well, thank you, because I will follow the step of Brian and Florent to mention that the opportunity for the future is really to break silos and on two main levels. And the first is, of course, within all layers of society and working towards a common goal. And so the private sector is part of this endeavor, and we need to increase integration between all of our initiatives. And that is what we started in France with a newly inaugurated Paris Santé Campus in the outskirts of Paris, putting together research institutes, startups, small and medium-sized businesses, as well as larger groups, all working towards e-health innovation. So that was mentioned also by my co-panelist. A similar initiative is on cybersecurity. It's called the Cyber Campus, and it's also on the same model, bringing together research institute and industrials and toward the same goal on cybersecurity. Of course, the second silo that we need to break down is on the international level, and these emerging campuses will be working with their foreign counterparts, and many of them from the United States. And our job at the embassy's office is to keep taking down the barriers that hinder cooperation between our research systems. And this is still some challenge that we are faced. On a very concrete note, digital health, I think, is one of the very promising cross-cutting subjects that we will be needing increased international collaboration for research, but also for regulation. For instance, health data sharing, and Brian mentioned it earlier, will require us to work together towards a common goal, and the United States is our biggest partner in this field. And I think I will stop that there.
Very good, thank you. We have a great question, very dear to, close to my heart here from the audience that I think we should address. And this relates to regional innovation, regional efforts. And what opportunities are there for regions to collaborate? Obviously, many of us know that Europe is dealing for a while now with smart specialization and what that does to innovation and future differentiation, of capabilities and so forth. This is a great topic. In fact, since we are talking about transatlantic, it's not just Europe-U.S., but that particular topic we will be dealing with in our conference, next conference in Brazil. The Brazilians are very much interested in the relationship of the local and the global, because of course regions live in a context, in a global context, right? So they behave like this. So please, who wants to address this topic? Regions and collaboration, transatlantic collaboration. Brian, go.
Sure, I'll take a shot at this. First of all, thank you, Helga, for your question. I guess the real thing with these regional innovation things is every area has particular things that they are good at and that they're interested in. So, for example, I'll give you an example. We've been funding artificial intelligence institutes. We funded our first round last year. We've got our second round that's coming out soon. And one of the things that we saw in this was each region, people teamed up in the regions to propose institutes around things that were relevant to them. So, for example, we have an AI institute involving agriculture, partnering with John Deere, of all things, in Iowa. Well, that makes sense because that's something that, they care very much about agriculture. We were just at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, listening to some folks talk about a gentleman had a startup there that was talking about frost protection for crops. Sorry, I'm picking two agricultural examples, but we have common interests between the U.S. and across the Atlantic. And if we create the systems correctly, it'll allow these regions to sort of band together, bring together their innovation groups, and solve issues that are locally relevant to them. That's what we want here in the U.S. And if we're able to do that here in the U.S., it's certainly possible that we could see transatlantic partnerships on those kinds of things, because if we figure out, if this fellow in Illinois figures out how to prevent grapes from being subject to frost, there's a lot of people in France that would probably care greatly about that and would be willing to work with us on that. So these are just examples of, you create a local issue and then you can wrap a lot of things around it to really build momentum and then introduce the international piece.
So very recently we finished a study for the Joint Research Center, the European Research Institute, which looked at the region of Guanajuato in Mexico, tried to apply the smart specialization methodology, and actually through that methodology look into possibilities for collaboration between Guanajuato and the automotive industry of Europe. That's an example. All right, Mireille, Florent?
I can go if you want.
Please,
so
please.
I think I'm so grateful for this question because it's extremely important, especially in transatlantic ties. The problem I see is that when Europeans go to the US, they have a bi-coastal mindset. So they just see the Silicon Valley or Boston. And when I arrived here, I realized that actually the US authorities are trying to move away from this bi-coastal model and develop innovation hubs all over the countries. And actually there is a book on that, creating 100 tech hub in the US, which is very funny because the EU, but there you go, there you go. So, which is very funny because the EU was always jealous about this bi-coastal model, but actually the way to go, the way forward is to have delocalized technology hub. Why? Because they create employment locally. And as you said, Nick, you develop smart fertilization, so you are good at one aspect and you attract companies and talent in that respective aspect. So I think this the model, the European model, is the one that the US is being copying now, which is quite unusual to say in terms. And I see Brian laughing, but it is very true.
It's all good.
We have found a very nice model. I see, and just to mention also that when we talk about region, it can be cross-country region, because I know that where I did my PhD in the south part of Belgium, It's the whole area, including northern France and Belgium, that is actually a region of biotech in Europe, very good in biotech and attracting a lot of companies and talent. So, this aspect is very important. And actually, the one thing I want to do here, while I'm here for the next 4 years, is to link much more better the regions with the state here in the US. I was last week in North Carolina in the Research Triangle, which is the biggest research park in the US, and very few colleagues in Europe know about it or have heard about it. They are very dynamic into reaching out to Europe, so I'm very glad to be able to promote that. I was also in Houston, in Texas, where they have an amazing medical innovation center with a number of prestigious and #1 institute. So I think our message for the European is to, I mean, of course you will want to go to the Silicon Valley, of course you will want to go to Boston, but go at other in other states, in other part of the US to find that it will be less crowded, you will have more opportunities, and these are growing really fast, and there are a lot of opportunities for both research cooperation, but also for companies to go and find collaborators.
Thank you. Excellent remark. We have 3 more minutes, so perhaps we go around with short closing comments. Mireille, you want to start? Anything? You a closing comment on any?
Well, just maybe saying that transatlantic cooperation is something very important for us to be able to tackle a global issue, and that we are all very committed to break the barriers that still exist, and to foster even more the cooperation that already exists between our 2 countries. And thank you for your invitation.
Thank you very, very much, Mireille. Brian.
I just want to echo Mireille's comments. I think it's a very exciting time for us. I think you know, we were just in a meeting right before this, and you know, our director was talking about the fact that you know, I think coming out of this, or hopefully someday coming out of this pandemic, there'll be a strong recognition that science is what has delivered us through this, and we need to take advantage of this moment to really drive ourselves forward like we have on other critical junctures. So you know, to Florent and Mireille, we look forward to working with you from the National Science Foundation, and really trying to enhance our collaborations. And thanks, Nick and the team, for organizing this today. It's really great to be here today and to have the opportunity to talk to you. And thanks to all the attendees.
Thank you, Brian. I think you actually echo your colleagues from other federal agencies as well. I'm sure if they were around here, they would say exactly the same, like Department of Energy and so forth. Right? Okay, thank you, Florent.
Yes, so great to have this discussion. I'm so grateful for my co-panelists and for you, Nick. If I may end with a more philosophical consideration, which I've been used to do and I very much like. Remember that, I mean, when we see the technological development, we have to reflect on the philosophical basis of this technological development. We have been used for the past 200 years to have it for exploiting the earth for our benefits through the Enlightenment philosophy, and which is the bedrock of both Europe and the US, that was brought to the US by European scholars and then by the founding fathers of the US. We have to reconsider this philosophical basis of why we are doing research, why we are developing technology. We have to take into account the planetary boundaries. We have to look at the world like it's not infinite, but finite. And we have to really adapt the way we develop technologies through that lens, which are planetary boundaries, sustainability of our world. And this is a discussion we should seriously have together, Brian, with our European peers, of course, because I see that a lot of technological development we are having now are actually to solve problems we have ourselves created. And this is not good. We have really to step out of this if we manage to do it, and reflect on what science should bring to humanity, and respecting planetary boundaries. So those will be my final words. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, all three of you, for joining this panel. I see Jackson is very ready to take over. So I wanted to say to close that I want to remind our colleagues there are opportunities for Europeans in the United States, and there are a lot of opportunities for Americans in Europe. An example is right here. Born and raised in a little corner of Europe, right? And living basically most than half of my life now on the other side of the Atlantic, happily doing so. And I think there are plenty of us around here, right? The Europeans in the United States, as well as Americans crossing the other way around. Okay, Jackson, it's all yours. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you all. I want to express my sincere thanks to the four of you for an insightful panel with some dynamic perspectives and for taking audience questions. In the spirit of having a conversation, taking questions, things like that, we will now continue to the breakout sessions. So I want to explain quickly. I will actually share my screen to give a quick overview of the three different breakout rooms. So you can see here, they're not numbered, but we basically have, I'll let you read the three names for yourselves with the speaker titles attached to them. These will be running concurrently, as the name implies. So for the next 30 minutes, we invite you. We will be opening the breakout room window on your Zoom, on the primary Zoom window in just a moment. You'll be able to openly just join whichever one you want. So the idea here is that each facilitator, each main speaker will speak at that session topic and then open the floor for a wider conversation. So we will be writing a post-event report. We want these breakout sessions to be where we feel that we're getting perspectives from researchers on the ground and others who work in research. So please pick a room that interests you. And after the initial remarks or presentation of that facilitator, we will really encourage you to share your perspectives, needs, challenges, etc. Just as the main plenary is being recorded, we will record the breakout sessions in order to share videos of that initial presentation portion. The recording will continue throughout the other sort of Q&A or the conversational aspect, but that part won't be shared. So I want you as audience members to feel that you can speak openly and freely and really make the conversation dynamic and in all directions. So please do feel free to check out that recording, and a follow-up email we'll send to you later this week, and know that that conversational aspect will be cut out. And this really is sort of an open space just to converse. So I'll stop sharing my screen in a moment and then invite you when that window pops up to choose the breakout room of your choosing. Please message us if there are any technical issues, but for the most part, we will have technical support in each breakout room, taking notes, recording, and then also behind the scenes trying to support you if there are any technical issues. So.
Thank you very much for all of these summaries. And I also want to thank the facilitators who run the breakout sessions and hosted these interesting conversations with the audience. And as the second half of EURAXESS North America, I would like to thank you all for being part of this event. Now, I would like to give the floor to Maria Cristina Russo for her closing remarks. Russo is the Director for Global Approach and International Partnerships at the Directorate General for Research and Innovation of the European Commission, responsible for developing and implementing the EU International Strategy for International Cooperation in Research and Innovation and international dimension of the Horizon program. So, Director Russo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Derya, and good afternoon to all of you. Thanks also to you, Jackson, for having moderated so brilliantly this debate. Thanks to you, all the participants, both the American and the European ones. Thanks to Florence Bernard, our science council in Washington, and also to my colleagues from Brussels participating, and in particular to Martin Ferrier. I will be very brief because I think a lot has been said, and there was a very, very rich debate for this European Research Day. I think that some very nice words, which are music to my ears, were said a lot during this debate, which in fact is the openness of our research policy and cooperation. And we have discussed the global approach to research innovation, which is based on the openness. We want to be as open as possible, and we want to be as close as necessary. But with our key partners, such as the US, we really want to be open. And what we've done in all this recent time has shown how much research and innovation is a building block of the transatlantic agenda. In the interest of time, I would be short, but I would just like to say that, for example, in Horizon Europe, we have introduced a huge novelty, which is the associated partner status, which will facilitate the participation of the US entities, which are not funded through the Horizon Europe program, which will not have any more to sign the grant agreement. Now, I will not go into the details in the conclusion of these events. Maybe there was touched upon, but it was a difficulty which was long-standing from 20 years, and we managed to solve that with lots of willingness from both sides. We are also very much engaged in the United States in the Transatlantic Technology Council. I have the honor of co-leading the clean technology strand of this Technology and Trade Council. And in fact, as it was also mentioned, we have very clear priorities of cooperation, which we have touched upon during this discussion today, related to the twin transition, the green and digital transition, to health, now to energy, as also a follow-up of the situation which stemmed from the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And all that is embedded in the global approach, is translated into concrete actions in the Horizon Europe program, and it gives huge opportunities for research cooperation between the EU and the US. I think that all of you have witnessed that in the positions that you're having now, that you will be having in the future, and we are very happy to continue to support the cooperation between new researchers through the different modalities under the Horizon Europe program. We have the Marie Skłodowska-Curie grants, the European Research Council, and now also the European Innovation Council. Just to say that our Commissioner Gabriel, the European Commissioner for Research and Innovation, will visit the US in July. Once again, an important testimonial of how science and technology are a key pillar of the EU-US relations. I will have the honor to go there, and the pleasure to be there. And we will have also, after the visit of the Commissioner, what we call the joint consultative group between the EU and the US under the Science and Technology Agreement, which will translate into concrete actions, the policy priorities that will have been enhanced by our Commissioner and the US leaders on research and innovation. All that to say that a lot has been done, lots of possibility exists, the political willingness is there, and but we do need all of you, the researchers from both sides of the Atlantic, to fully tap the potential that this cooperation offers. With that, I would like to thank you very much. Thanks all of you for organizing this event, and I hope that we will continue to work together as swiftly as we have done so far. Thank you.